जुमेरात को गुजरात के अहमदाबाद में एयर इंडिया का बोइंग 787 तैयारा टेक ऑफ के चंद मिनट बाद गिरकर तबाह हो गया। मरकजी हुकूमत ने इसकी तहकीकात के लिए एक पैनल तश्कील दिया है जो 3 माह के अंदर अपनी रिपोर्ट पेश करेगा। इस दौरान अमरीकी बहरिया के साबिक पायलट और मारूफ नेविगेशन माहिर कैप्टन ने तैयारा हादसे की वीडियो का तज्जिया करते हुए इसमें RAT रैम एयर टर्बाइन एक्टिवेशन की बात की है। इन्होंने तैयारे के हादसे की 3 मुमकिना वजूहात बताई है। पहला, बरक़ी खराबी, दूसरा, दोनों इंजनों की नाकामी, या तीसरी, हाइड्रोलिक नाकामी। स्टो ने इस हादसे के वाहिद बच जाने वाले विश्वास के बयान पर भी भरोसा किया। कैप्टन स्टीव ने कहा है कि पहला इम्कान यह है कि दोनों इंजन एक साथ फेल हो गए, जिसका मतलब है कि यह हादसा लिफ्ट के नुकसान यानी जहाज के परों से काफ़ी हवा ना मिलने की वजह से पेश आए। स्टीव के मुताबिक तैयारे में इतनी ताकत नहीं थी कि इसे ऊपर की तरफ उड़ा कर रख सके। अगर ऐसा हुआ तो तैयारा बड़े परिंदों के झुंड से टकरा गया होगा, जिसकी वजह से दोनों इंजन फेल हो गए होंगे। एक और वजह यह हो सकती है कि हवाई जहाज़ के टेक ऑफ करने से पहले कुछ खास टेक्निकी स्टिकर्स की ज़रूरत होती है, जिसमें अहम वजह फ्लिप्स के नीचे गिरना है। फ्लिप्स हवाई जहाज़ के परों के वो हिस्से हैं जो टेक ऑफ के दौरान लिफ्ट को बढ़ाते हैं। कैप्टन स्टीव के मुताबिक अगर पायलट फ्लिप्स लगाना भूल गए तो तैयारा हवा में नहीं ठहर सकेगा।
Off like a rocket. That part never happens. Right here, as we're looking at this airplane, the gear should be coming up into the airplane. It never does. Let me play it a little bit longer, and then I'm going to tell you why I think it didn't. Right there is a point where the pilot fly would normally bring the airplane up to about 12 degrees nose up. The gear should be almost completely up into the airplane. At this point, it hasn't budged an inch. You're going to see on a 787, the ends of the wings start to bend a little bit. They usually bend a lot more than this airplane. Why? Because as the airplane's picking up speed and it's picking up lift over those wings, those composite wings really bend. That is an indication, a visual indication, they're really getting a lot of lift. This 787 is not getting a lot of lift right now. But nothing's going on with the engines as far as I can see. Now, let me continue with this. At this point, watch the nose. It starts to go over right there. It starts to come back over. Why is it doing that? Here's what I think happened. And again, folks, this is just my opinion. This is a theory, that one theory among many. Any of the others I could have shared with you up to this point could be absolutely right. But why do I think this one is more likely than the other two? Here's why. I think the pilot flying said to the co-pilot, gear up at the appropriate time. I think the co-pilot grabbed the flap handle and raised the flaps instead of the gear. If that happened, and this is a big if that happened, this explains a lot of why this airplane stopped flying, why the lift over the wings died. Because at that point now, the flaps are retracting, all that extra lift you're producing in the wings goes away. You're already slow, you already got the power pushed up all the way. This airplane's as heavy as it's ever going to be in this flight, and you still got those great big landing gear out there producing all sorts of drag. This is a bad combination at this point. You see the nose now start to come over. Now, why would the nose come over? Because the airplane is trying to create as much lift as it can over those wings. And if the flaps are coming up, it's going to nose over to get even more airflow over those wings. That's going to be a very, very uncomfortable feeling for the pilot at the controls. Why? Because he's losing airspeed and he's going to begin to lose altitude now. Remember, he thinks the gear has come up. He might not know that the flaps came up. He just sees a motion over next to him, and he's looking outside going, wait, what's going on? It's all very confusing, and it all happens in a split second. Let's watch. The airplane starts to settle in. It starts to now descend. You see the pilot start to pull the nose up a little bit more, okay? As he's getting closer to the ground, he's probably got the power pushed up all he can, and now I think he's going to get into a power on stall. Not enough lift is being produced by those wings. All that drag is being produced by the landing gear that's still out there. Could anything have saved the day at this point? Maybe if they'd raised the gear. Maybe if they'd raised the gear and put the flaps back out. But it's very unlikely that once this gets to this point that they can recover from it. And now watch what happens. The airplane begins to kind of wallow, right? The pilot pulls back even more on the nose. That aggravates the whole thing. And now you get this waddle into the ground, and it's in a controlled power on stall until it impacts the ground. If they had had 1,500 feet or 1,000 feet even to lower that nose and gain that airspeed back, they might have been able to fly out of it. They don't have the luxury. I don't think this airplane got higher than 500-600 feet. And then when they start to waddle down, they're down at 200 feet. They just can't lower the nose, and the airplane just kind of does a power on descent into the ground. So that's my theory. Now, I could be completely wrong about this, but the flight characteristics look to me to be an airplane that doesn't have enough lift coming over the wings. And the only way that could happen is if they didn't have the proper flap setting. So however they got to an improper flap setting, it's inconceivable in my mind that they actually did that takeoff roll without the flaps out, because the bells and the horns and everything else that would be going on at that point, there's still no indication that either of the engines failed. And this airplane can fly just fine on one engine at any gross weight. It will climb out no problem on one engine. So the idea that both engines failed at the same time, again, is like a trillion to one shot.
इसी तरह की मज़ीद जानकारी के लिए हमसे जुड़े रहिए। हमारे YouTube, Facebook और Instagram पेज को ज़रूर फॉलो करें। जनता रिपोर्टर, आम जनता की आवाज़।